Excited to be joined now on the GolfBet podcast by Scott Fawcett of DECADE Golf. He works with U.S. Open champion Bryson DeChambeau. You know, Scott, I watched some of the YouTube videos, interviews with you earlier today. Nobody knows how to introduce you, so I came up with, what do you think of golf data scientist and strategic analyst? Analyst. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Tell us what exactly that means then. What does a data scientist and strategic analyst do?
You know, I've got finance and economics degrees. I played professional golf. I've played high-level poker. I've got a pretty unique background. And so really, like you say, data scientist, I'm not much of a big data guy. I graduated from college in 1996 and have basically been on my own since. So that's why I partnered with Lou Stagner, because he's great at manipulating the big data. I know the math and I know what I want it to see. And then I actually use a different data guy. So maybe I'm just the in-between guy.
So you've known Bryson. I don't want to say you've been working with, whenever we say working with someone, it sounds like, you're standing next to them on the range, like whispering into their ear after every shot. But tell us kind of the relationship with you and Bryson, how it evolved. And secondly, kind of how proud you are to see sort of the fruits of your labor come to fruition this past weekend with the major championship.
It's really been incredible, honestly. And Bryson, so when I first created DECADE, I combined the new strokes gained database with a bunch of TrackMan data. I've been, great friends with Como for almost 20 years now. And so I took all of the TrackMan data that we've had and created a generic shot pattern, combined it all together to, in essence, solve course management. And then when I caddied for Will Zalatoris, who just finished sixth in the U.S. Open, when I caddied for him back in 2014 when he won the Texas Amateur and U.S. Junior, Jason Enlow, the SMU coach, and Alan Bratton from Oklahoma State, they both came up to me and they're like, dude, I don't know what you're doing, but you're clearly doing something math-based with these guys. With Will, what is it? And I kind of explained it to him, and Jason's like, Bryson plays way too aggressively because he thinks you can perfect the game. Like, if you can turn this into some sort of an indoor seminar, I think Bryson would really thrive on it. And so that's honestly, like, I own an electricity company. This is kind of a side gig. And I whipped it all together. I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan, and I modeled one of his seminars. I went and gave my seminars at Oklahoma State and Duke and SMU. And Bryson literally said in the seminar when he sat there, he said, I aim at every single flag. He's like, I figure if it's your week, it's your week. And getting a guy like that who's really good at golf, at the time he's like 60th in the world, and getting him just to understand you can't be perfect in this game, and slowly changed the way he sees and views it. And then obviously a few months later, he wins the NCAAs and US Amateur. And so my relationship with him is I created all these course packets and did the data for him on how to play all of the golf courses. And when he was over in Dubai and finished 12th in the in the European Tour as an amateur, we had these conversations where I'm telling him from the satellites how to play the course. And then I did that with him through getting his PGA Tour card through the web.com tour at the time. And then his rookie year out on the PGA Tour. Now, obviously, he's signed a deal with Microsoft, so they're the big data guys now. But I'm essentially the one who solved it and taught it all to him. And I still have a great working relationship with Como, where I kind of tell him what Bryson needs to be doing as a relay, if you will, in between.
So, Scott, I believe it was Tuesday before the U.S. Open started, Bryson was doing an interview with some of the reporters there. And at this point, everyone's talking about, man, the rough is it's so thick. It's so gnarly. You can't, if you're in it, you're not going to be able to get it to the green. And Bryson came out and said, yeah, I'm basically going to bang driver all over this golf course. And everyone kind of snickered and everyone goes, Bryson's going to hit driver everywhere. First of all, how much were you involved in that decision-making with him? And secondly, what did you think from the reaction to everyone sort of snickering at Bryson when he said it?
I've never been more confident in my entire life, the Tiger era included, that a specific person was going to win a golf tournament.
Wow.
I mean, literally, and again, like, it sounds like it's easy to say in hindsight, but I told a lot of people, and the problem is the PGA Tour, we've got these ethics clauses that we have to sign in order to get access to ShotLink now from gambling. So I kind of just sit on my tongue the whole time, but I'm like, this guy's unbeatable. And you'll notice I tweeted the text that I sent to Como and timestamped it before it started, saying, I guarantee you this guy's going to win the tournament. It's just set up too perfect. But I can't tell the world that because of the ethics clauses. So to your question of how much am I involved, I mean, again, Como lives 500 yards from me. We're good friends. And leading into the PGA, I was explaining to him how you've just got to hit driver everywhere. There's nowhere that 3-wood's really ever the option unless it's for a shape reason or a crossing hazard. And he goes out and he finishes fourth in the PGA, but there were a few times he hit 3 with it. He just didn't need to. And, you know, Como comes home and like, dude, I'm telling you, that's the deal. It's just these little tenths of a shot everywhere that he leaked. We had a conversation before they left for the US Open. I'm like, dude, every single hole at this course is a driver. And there are times, you know, where certain holes like 18 years, where the dog leg, it's just too hard for him to turn it that hard while hitting it that hard. It's a really hard thing to do, obviously. And so that's the only reason to drop back. And it's just funny just to watch it. I mean, essentially unfold perfectly. There's no question he was going to decimate them, because again, to your next question, when people are laughing about it, and the Bryson gave the analogy that I don't think he even realized was actually from me, of if every fairway was 1 yard wide, you would want to hit it as far as possible. I'm like, that's essentially how I explained it to Como. The other great analogy is like making it to day 2 of the World Series of Poker. I could teach my 7-year-old daughter how to do that by folding every hand. We could tell everyone at the table, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play aces and kings only. We're going to shove all in. She'd have no chance of winning, but she would guaranteed make it to day 2. And that's what hitting 2-iron is like. It's like just kind of, it's not the worst play ever, but you're just folding away a little bit of equity every time you do. And part of winning a golf tournament, it's why you don't win very often, is just having a little bit of positive variance. And that's essentially what you have to set up in your favor to have any chance of working out.
So first of all, I see Pete salivating, by the way. I was going to tell you, Scott, first of all, you've got my number. I know you've got an ethics clause, but we at the Action Network, we're allowed to gamble. So, you know, you just hit me up the next time you've got a sure thing out there, especially in a major. Peter is salivating because you're literally speaking his entire language right now, and you guys are going to be best friends within the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, Scott, it's great to hear you explain everything. Poker background for me, then finance, and now betting on golf and playing DFS golf is my main gig. So love hearing you talk about variance and risk reward. And I think the thing that Bryson did with the driver, and I think an underrated thing that, you know, people don't look at enough, is strokes gained off the tee, which is the most predictive low variance stat. Talk about other risk reward spots in golf and how you've kind of applied math to that. Also, I'm a 10 handicap golfer. What would you say to someone who's a 10 handicap from a risk reward standpoint as well?
Well, the real key, so like the idea of I start my seminar off in the Decade app off by these videos, basically I'm saying, stop trying to make birdies, stop trying to make putts. Winning requires luck. And just getting people to understand that, again, like when I was in my 20s, I traveled with Chad Campbell and Chris Riley, and I'm playing with them. And, you know, I won a couple times on the Hooters Tour. I was a pretty good player, but Chad won 8 of 16 starts one year. And I'm like, I know I'm as good as this guy. And it's really just understanding how to manage your game and to score is really the separator. And so, you know, to a 10 handicap, just really understanding shot patterns, understanding targets, like that's the biggest thing that I think a guy like you can just really understand, is that even pros, when you see, and it does drive me crazy, and I should not let it, but it does, when you see a guy hit it tight to a pin that, you know, was tucked behind a leg, is like, what an aggressive, confident shot. I'm like, there's zero chance he was actually aiming at that. And so the main thing you've got to understand is you've got a shotgun and not a sniper's rifle. And the next key to that is you don't know if the shot, like with a driver that's 30 yards left of your target, 30 yards right of your target, or right at your target. You'd have no idea which one's coming next, but it's somewhere within that shotgun pattern. And once you accept that reality, you start, you know, using that to shift your target around the golf course. And that's essentially, again, what a guy like Bryson, he thinks that perfect golf is possible. And it's really because of subtle uphill and downhill lies, the ball above your feet, below your feet, subtle variances in wind. Shoot, the Pythagorean theorem works against you in golf on tour, because if you're in the left side of the fairway and the pin's on the left, the yardage book goes to the front of the green and then straight in. I mean, anytime you see somebody hit a shot close is luck. And this, Sean Martin, the PGA Tour's writer, tweeted out after Zalatoris made a hole-in-one last week. He was needling me, which my haters didn't recognize it was just a joke. But he says Zalatoris makes a hole-in-one in the U.S. Open, and all Fawcett will want to talk about is that he wasn't aiming at the pin. So I sent Will a text. I was like, all right, where were you aiming? And he said 3 yards right. Like, that's the key. Is it sexy to say it was luck? It was a great shot. At impact, it was a good shot. The fact it hit a 4 1/4 inch wide hole from 168 yards is, I mean, it's just insane. And it's just variance. Yeah. What was the first part of your question there? Where did you start?
Oh, no, I was just asking, where do you think, what are some other examples of risk reward? And I definitely want to talk about Zalatoris too, who I was bullish on coming in. And I think he should, I mean, I'm a big Corey Connors guy too, just from a ball striking standpoint, but love Zalatoris this week too.
The key to To understand again, so that's why I said I start my seminars with stop trying to make birdies. There's every birdie, even on the PGA Tour, there's some sort of luck involved or positive variance. Otherwise, you do it more often. And so, like when you come up to an easy par five, might have a scoring average of 4.6. So to make birdie, you have to do something to gain 0.6 shots against the field, as opposed to only losing 0.4 if you make a par. And so there's just all these disproportionate rewards. So when someone comes in, here's a birdie hole, no, it's more birdieable than another hole. But on average, I would make a lot of money by betting you're going to make par, even on the easiest par five, within reason in the world. And so there is two exceptions to that. And your tee shot on a drivable par four and your approach shot on a semi-reachable par five. Those are two spots where you are actually trying to make birdie. And the classic example of that is Riviera, number 10. Mm-hmm. And the historic advice, pre-data was, well, you've got to, to the front left pin, you go ahead and hit driver down there, and then you proceed. And if it's back right, you lay up, and then you attack it with your 80-yard wedge shot. And it's just hilarious because I actually have got some great images that I'll tweet out later on to follow up on this. But if you look at the scoring averages over the last 4 years, they've just started to plummet. And if you draw a line at the bunker, and it's like, and I'm making these numbers up because obviously I didn't know what to think about, but it's like, it was 50-50 laying up before, and now it's like 90% sending it up there. But the key is, once you get out of position, you stop trying to make birdie. So if it's, so easy to make birdie to the front hole location, if the pin's in the back and you hit it way too long or a little bit short or anything like that, you just try to put it on the front bulb. And I tried to make birdie with the tee shot. It didn't pan out. The key from this point is not making bogey. And it's just so interesting because really it's kind of like if you do, corporate turnaround. If a guy's coming in to turn around a failing corporation, he doesn't come in and be like, all right, how can we sell a whole lot more stuff? It's like, dude, where can we trim our expenses? And golf is no different. You don't shoot lower scores. Well, obviously you do shoot lower scores by making more birdies, but you don't make more birdies intentionally. Instead, you do it by making fewer bogeys, and that all comes back to those reachable par four, stupid bogey type holes.
Yeah, you just said something that's right on point. The thing that's actually helped my golf game the most when I first started trying to play a little bit more seriously, I got the advice that wherever you are, a lot of times it obviously doesn't happen on the tee, but wherever you are, what's a good score for you from where you are? So if you're out of position, like you said, Castle Pines number 10, this long par four with a huge pond in front of it. You put it in the rough on the left, and now you have a bad line. You got 200 some yards in. Like, yeah, a 5, a bogey for me is a great score. So don't try to compound the air by going for the green and then putting it in the water and then making double bogey or worse. Set yourself up to make a 5. And obviously PGA Tour players are much better, but
but they're not. I mean, when I show people Jason Day's shot pattern with a driver from 5 years ago over at John Sinclair's place in Fort Worth, when he's number 1 in the world, he's 3rd in strokes gained driving, he hit 20 drivers in practice, hitting the same shot over and over again, and the shot pattern was 74 yards wide. And most people's jaw hit the ground when you think about that. Like, dude, he's the best player in the world, 74 yards wide. Even the best players, I mean, again, I'm a twice failed playing professional, so I can't say this, but they're not that good. Professional golfers are the worst at their craft of any professional athlete in the world. Like if a professional dart thrower throws a dart and says that's a bullseye, I can assure you it was a bullseye. Golf, it's like, yeah, it was a good shot-ish. It's kind of near my target. And that really is, again, the expectation management part. Again, decade, the E is expectation. That's where it all comes from. Because again, in my 20s, I was an absolute raging lunatic. And using the data, not just to make better decisions, but to also just calm you down. Like, dude, yeah, it wasn't a great par from 106 in the fairway, but you only lost 0.2 shots. It's not the end of the world. It's actually more surprising if you make birdie, 4 times more surprising. And again, you just use that information to really, especially these young kids, the key to where I've had so much success. I mean, Colin Morikawa sat through my seminar in college. I mean, Doc Redman, just all these guys, the vast majority of the young guys that you've seen out on tour either had my app in college or sat through my seminar some random way. And the key to that is your prefrontal cortex, the brain. Like it's not that a 19-year-old is dumb. It's that their brain is literally incapable of making good decisions. It's why they make a better soldier than Jason or I. We're like, dude, they're shooting at us out there. I'm not running out there and give a 20-year-old a couple shots of whiskey and they'll run out there. And that's just because they're not, the prefrontal cortex isn't developed. They don't have executive function. So the beauty of Decade is it gives you a very simple 5-step process to making a mathematically optimal correct decision. As long as you can do 6 minus 1, you can run the system in your head, and now you're making mathematically correct targets that a guy like Tiger, when he looks at it, he's like, yeah, that's basically how I play the game. I don't think I'm going to change the vast majority of PGA Tour players the way they see the game. We're going to tighten up decisions and emotional control, but we're now teaching 16, 17, 18-year-olds to make 20-year veteran decisions in the heat of the battle, and that's the difference. It's mainly because they're not even capable of making a good decision.
Scott, we've got one more major coming up this year. The place that
Bryson.
you might have heard of, Augusta National. Just fire Bryson, and that's it. Okay, all right. Forget the ethics stuff. We're just all putting all our money on Bryson. I don't know if you've done your research and data, but we all know Augusta National pretty well. How do you attack Augusta National as a professional golfer?
Bunch of drivers.
I mean, seriously. I mean, well, the thing that's so funny, and again, like, we're all guilty of this, but like 7, it's super tight. It's, and it's a 450-yard hole. So, well, I'm just going to hit 3-wood to get it in play. Your 3-wood shot pattern is not smaller than your driver shot pattern. It has worse gear effect. It's a smaller head. The only thing a 3-wood does versus your driver is go 40 yards shorter. That's it. And so, I mean, 1, you can carry the bunkers. 2, I've put it up on Twitter today. If you can carry that right bunker at like 315, it's 80 yards wide from tree to tree. It's huge. 2's driver, 5's driver, 7's whatever. 8, you carry the bunker. 9, you carry everything. 10, he'll probably still have to hit, but Bryson can hit it really high. He'll probably still have to hit a roasty draw. 3, he's going straight, 13 straight left. 15, I think he can carry the trees potentially. Like, and 18 is just the funniest one ever. Remember when Tiger won in 97, he just blew it over the bunkers out into 2 fairway. It's 317 from the back of the back tee box to carry the bunkers. And if Bryson brings that 48-inch driver out, it's another 6 or 8 miles an hour. I mean, he literally will just blow it into 2 fairway and have sand wedge in. I mean, I really do think that what he did at Winged Foot was absolutely amazing. And all the people who are just upset, like he made a mockery of the course. No, he didn't. He just played the course better than everyone else. There's nothing he did that was a mockery of the golf course. But I will say, if he does what he's capable of doing at Augusta, it actually would be a mockery of the intention of the design.
Well, speaking of that, Augusta years ago lengthened the golf course. Everyone called it tiger proofing. I never understood it because, hey, there's a guy who's hitting it longer than everybody else. Let's make the golf course longer so it doesn't play into his hands. I don't quite understand that one. But let's say, whether it's Augusta or another course, let's say they want to Bryson proof. How would you Bryson proof? How do you make it so that Bryson can't be the best player on a golf course?
This is the funniest part about it. And again, like, I get in too many arguments with the architect lovers on Twitter, and it's just I think it's kind of love-hate, but I think they just hate me. I just kind of enjoy that banter. But the funniest thing about it is, aside from the obvious, we have a river or a bunker crossing the fairway at 310. Like, that is obviously how you do it. And I think that's just lazy and unfair. We don't make Brian Gay putt with his wedge. So I don't think that's a solution. It's just a solution. I think it's just a really, really lame one. The only way you handicap this guy, aside from pinching stuff in, is with trees. If you hit it further and wider, and there's just a 40-yard corridor between trees the whole way, and so if you hit it 290 inside 40 or 360, you've got to keep it inside 40. It's the same thing for everyone. How good are you? Well, the funny thing about it is the architecture lovers are in this tree removal craze and phase where they're just like, oh, look how great this course looks with no trees. Like, well, you just totally made it Brysonable. And that's just a fact. The only way I hate saying unfair because that's not an actual reason, but the only way that you can do it without making it unfair is by trees. You have to just put something in the way.
Ches Reavie, then. That would be Ches Reavie would be my guy if you just put a bunch of trees or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
he can't putt, but he hits it straighter than anybody.
Just laser beams. Yeah, I mean, that's when Brendan Todd, these guys. But again, there's just
Brendan Todd's a great example too.
The key to it is yes, you're going to hit maybe 7% more fairways, unless you're someone like Henrik Stenson, who does hit down too much on the driver, does hit his 3-wood materially better than his driver. That's an anomaly. There are anomalies out there, but aside from that, 3-wood is never the option unless you're taking out a crossing hazard, which a dog leg, even though it's not a crossing hazard, a dog leg is a end of runway hazard, it's either driver or 2-iron. There's never a chance, a reason to hit 3-wood. And that's the thing that a lot of the old school guys still don't quite understand. They're like, well, we used to do this. Like, no, you guys hit 3-wood all the time. You taught me to hit 3-wood. I've played practice rounds with you guys when I played in the 1999 US Open. You're like, this is a 3-wood for sure. I hit 3-wood off of number 1 at Pinehurst. Number 10's a 650-yard par 5. I'm like, well, I'll just hit 3-wood in the fairway since we can't get home in 2. I fanned it in the right trees and buried my 3-wood in the tee box. Like, I remember these things from 21 years ago because I was so bad at it. But I think that's why I teach it so good now is I'm like, that's the first thing I tell a tour player when I get a new one. I'm like, look, dude, I've never had a crazy thought that I haven't had times 10. You have to be honest with me and we'll work through these thoughts that you're having, but you've got to tell me the crazy stuff going on in your head because we've certainly all got it.
Scott could literally speak with you. Oh, Pete, you got
Sorry,
more?
I got to jump in on Zalatoris. Last thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is a green hitting machine. I believe he led the Corn Ferry in green and regulation percentage, and he's long off the tee. What do you think he needs to improve on the most? How does he get better?
He certainly, obviously, his main point has obviously always been he's kind of struggling with putting. When he went through a growth spurt when he was 12, it was also when he specialized in golf, and just the increasing bone length, he just got into a real funky way with the putter. But he's switched, I don't know if it's been maybe 2 years now, to a Kuchar style arm bar with the claw. And he's hit a few putts that have been absolutely money. And you just don't do what he's done this year without, really improving that. Obviously, I play a lot of golf with him back here in Dallas, but I haven't seen him out on the course, but the road, but I don't really need to. Like, there's just no way you do what he's doing. Yeah, I played a lot of golf. I grew up here in Plano and played a lot of golf with Fred Couples back in 92, 3, and 4 when he was number 1 in the world and winning everything and the Masters and the coolest guy on the planet. And there was just something different when he hit the ball. Like, you've just never seen or heard anything like it. And aside from, again, Will, I've played with that kid since he was 9 years old. He grew up, he was a junior at my home course, which is why I was going to play in the Texas Amateur myself in 2014, but I had a cortisone shot in my right arm and it paralyzed my arm. So I was like, look, Will, I did a lot of math-based stuff. If you just let me tell you what to do, I promise you'll win. He's 3,300 in the world at the time. Had never won more in a high school golf tournament. He goes and wins by 3. And I was like, oh, shit, I didn't actually think that was going to work, but it did. And it was the easiest thing I've ever seen. I go down and caddy for him at the U.S. Junior, and he wins there. And it's just there is no limit for this guy. He needs to get a little bit better with the putter. But what you saw out of Bryson yesterday, like, again, what I texted Como after everyone was kind of, before they teed off, like, and I saw how hard he's playing, I texted him, like, Bryson's nails. That dude, I hate saying a winner, but that dude has got some stones. And I would put Will just right there with him. Like, he just gets it in the hole, and I don't care what pressure. You get a curveball thrown at you like pandemic this year. And, man, I could be on the tour next year, and he's on the tour. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, actually, we're going to turn this into a bizarre 2-year wraparound event. And I don't think really people understand the story that he's number 1 on the Corn Ferry for, they probably played 70% of the events. Like, that dude should be done and on tour. And instead they've given the top 10 guys, they get starts in the alternate field events. And that's great, but it's really kind of a hex because, well, he still has to keep his status on the Corn Ferry Tour to get his PGA Tour card for 2022. But now you're not going to turn down starts on the PGA Tour. And so now he's in this position where, like, dude, the guy might play 42 out of the next 50 weeks because he's playing the crappy tournaments on the PGA Tour and then every Corn Ferry in order to keep his status. Or you go to the U.S. Open with big FedEx Cup points, a spotlight for sponsors and invites. I mean, honestly, I think there's more pressure on him, a guy like Davis Riley, the other, guys from the Corn Ferry that were there. There's this hidden pressure that I didn't see anyone talking about it, but Will basically, he won $429,000, which is crazy since I've known him since he was 9 yesterday, but he really won probably $3 million yesterday because he's going to get straight out on tour. Like, he literally was playing for millions of dollars that nobody even knew was this purse. And to go out there on Sunday and post 71, and I was blown away. Like, again, like, I love the kid like a son. I've caddied for him in 100 different rounds and, 3 or 4 events for the last 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. he's like a son to me. And even I was like, it's a big ass to go out there. And I'm like, holy shit, he did it. Like, I can't believe it. And he, when I sent him a text, like, buddy, I'm so proud. He's like, just to him, it's like, of course I did it. It's just golf. And I'm like, that's why I didn't make it. I didn't know that when I was your age. The sky is the limit for that guy in a Cliff Notes.
Scott, this is awesome stuff. I want to thank you for coming on and joining us. Could literally listen to you all night. Peter, I believe, has signed up for 3 of your Decade Golf seminars as we did the interview. He's I am telling you right now, Peter's got your email now, and you're gonna get bombarded because you guys literally speak the exact same language. And I'm telling you, you guys need to hang out a little bit because you guys
I'm in.
Absolutely are kind of 2 peas in the pod with a lot of the stuff you talk about. So
what we did for the U.S. Open, it was kind of a last-second decision because I had so many people asking me for the course packet that I make for the players. They're like, oh, it'd be kind of fun. I'm like, fine, on Twitter. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to give it to anyone who wants it. And I was like, well, I may as well just give them a free month of the Decade app too. Mm-hmm. So I'll put a link up or tweet it out again, and I'll leave it up does this go out pretty quick with you guys?
Yeah, we'll have it up tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'll put it out, and I'll leave it up for another month to where anybody who's listening can get a free month of the Decade app also and see where Doc and Bryson and Will and all these young kids you're seeing out there doing it got their start.
Well, you got me. I'm doing nothing but hitting drivers from now on. I might have to hit a couple drivers on every hole, but
the real key is it sounds so simple, but there is thought. I know that's what frustrates me is everyone Twitter like, oh, it's simple. You just hit driver. I'm like, no, there is actual thought going on here, especially on the approach shot strategy. But yeah, send it, hit it hard.
And by the way, I know you tweeted it out. I tweeted it out yesterday as well, but Brooks Koepka twice, Dustin Johnson, Gary Woodland, and now Bryson DeChambeau, the last 5 U.S. Open champions. I wonder if there's a common theme going on here. So, Scott Fawcett, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.